a quilt that's like this, the width of a yard and about a yard in fabric, because it's like, it's not very expensive to do the back then. So,
Right.
and I get bored really easily. So you have to have like perseverance to do a queen size quilt. And I don't think I was born with that or acquired those skills. So, so I admire you. Yeah. So, yeah, I was even in grad school, but I was in law school. I joined a block of the month club, and by the time I got to a lap quilt, I was kind of bored. So it was like the queen size. Like I didn't end up doing the rest of it. I just did like the first 4 months. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to move on. So,
well, the queen size is definitely an undertaking. I think the shortest amount of time I've ever finished one is probably 2 years. But I also don't have a ton of time to work on it. Like, at this point, I have a standing appointment with my friend Lisa. We do creative projects once a week. I work on the quilt once a week for like 4 hours. And that's really all the time I have to spend on it. So, like, I'm sure I had like a sewing room in my own home, it would at this point take less time because I have gotten sort of much more efficient about it.
Yeah.
But
that's really cool that you're doing it with your friend and you've got a set time each week. That's great. Do you like doing that? Do you like being able to quilt with others? I mean, is she quilting too, or is she doing other stuff?
She's doing other stuff. It's sort of an accountability buddy system where like, I know I'm supposed to go to Lisa's house, so I have that in my schedule, and I know I'm going to do that, so I don't schedule other things on top of that time. It also means like I'm not like the project isn't sitting for so long that I end up not caring about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm always there. I'm there. I was there 2 days ago. I obviously won't be there next week because I will be home for Christmas, but like having that, and also means that she's like myself, has a lot of things to do, but is a person who wants to prioritize their creative interest, but can't necessarily always like force themselves to do it. So the fact that we will both be there at the same time means like, yes, now it's time for you to work on your novel, for me to do this quilting. We'll drink tea.
That's awesome. And so,
yeah.
So first you have like, you're young and have a job and work and so quilting is an extra thing. You're a very busy person, and you are not a grandma, right? You're not a grandma yet. So why quilts at your age? Like what should people understand about why you quilt and who you are? That's the first question.
Well, I think part of it is there's so much I like about quilting. So I'm a total like Appalachian history nerd, and I love quilting because like that's sort of my my family belongs to that sort of group, and we find preserving like quilting is just like a form of making blankets and expression to be pretty neat. So I take it seriously, I guess, because my mom did it and my grandmother did it, and we all had, it's part of like a family continuation sort of thing. I like it because I love color and geometric pattern, and also like taking something that is old and making it modern and new on a completely mundane, practical level. I need all the blankets in the world. I'm freezing all of the time. I am sitting with a blanket on me right now, and it's probably 65 in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
I love blankets. I also just there's a thing about really long projects that I enjoy. Also, you get better at it. The learning curve is pretty quick. I remember looking at like the first quilt I ever made and like the third quilt I ever made and being like, man, I got better at this. Like this third quilt is way better than that first quilt. So I don't know. There's a lot there. There's a lot of also like a lot of infinite variation. Like the first quilt I ever did was a super traditional pattern with some really like very basic color patterns, and then the quilting I did on top of the piecing was just in the ditch. It was just very. I'm just re-quilting the shape that's already here, and the last baby quilt I finished was a very bright sort of mixed matched colors, very vibrant. And then the quilting pattern on top of it was a bunch of like, the center of it was an anatomical heart that was like, then it sort of branched out and became like leaves and heart, like traditional heartsy flower kind of things.
That's really cool.
That's fun.
That's totally cool.
So you get a lot of like mixing tradition and then like whatever modern things you're interested in, you can make it work. It's a very open-ended medium in that sense.
Yeah. So what do you think about, so one of the things that we see is this hyper commercialization of quilting. So you get the sort of traditional quilting and you get like, oh, we made it out of our clothing and we need to keep warm, that kind of traditional quilting. And then starting in like 76 with the bicentennial, you get this ramp up of hyper consumerism, hyper commercialization of it. How do you feel about that part of the quilting world thing?
Well, I used to be a lot more rude and critical of pretty much just the commercialization generally of crafting. And, you know, quilting particularly, but also just like, you know, knitting and crocheting had the same sort of feel as I was in high school and then through college, where we'd go to Joann's and suddenly, my mother has this complaint every time we're in a Joann's. Oh my gosh, there's this whole wall of just fleece, right? And all you have to do to make a fleece blanket is like do some like knots or whatever. And then you've made something. You made me think. You didn't make the fleece. You didn't even design, like pick out exactly what sort of fleece you wanted, I suppose, is really all you contributed. But if that's what people need, if people need like pre-packaged, pre-cut sort of patterns, or like if that's what they need to get into it, then I suppose that's fine. If you really need to like start out, because not everyone had like a mother who quilted or sewed a lot, and they don't necessarily know how sewing machines work, or I don't know, they didn't figure out that you had to set the iron to like the lowest possible setting to not melt your thread or whatever. If you need a lot of hand holding, then that's fine. As long as you, I guess, can move beyond it. If all you do for your entire quilting life is make a lot of pre-packaged things, you never try to get better at it or more inventive with it or even mix it up at all, then that seems kind of sad. Like you're not getting the full experience.
Yeah. I was in an Uber recently or Lyft, probably Lyft, because I don't do Uber that much anymore. But you know, I try to talk to people, and so I tell them about my project, and they're like, "Oh, we went to Joann's and we tried to make one of those baby blankets, but we didn't understand a word of the directions, so we ended up getting something else." So, I mean, it was a really nice moment of like, you know, there are very different levels, and everyone's sort of at a specific level, and you kind of have to accept that. You know, even those basic directions may be too difficult if you haven't sewn before, which is really was funny because I thought, okay.
That's kind of why the internet is pretty exciting. I mean, if you don't know what something means, there's probably a YouTube video about how to do it.
There's probably a YouTube video on the kit they bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
I watched a YouTube video on how to change the fuses in my car.
Wow.
And I went to a Pep Boys, bought the fuses, marched out there, replaced them. I mean, YouTube's amazing.
Yeah, YouTube is.
The number of things you can teach yourself how to do now is just incredible.
It's totally changed the nature of knowledge in this amazing way. It really is remarkable. On every level, like you're not alone in pretty much anything you want to do anymore. So it's really it's cool. Okay, so quilting. So we're doing a project that I want to tell you about. So that I think you might be interested in helping us with, which is some of the ladies here want to do a conference on Gee's Bend. Do you know Gee's Bend quilts? They're in Alabama. It was a very poor section of Alabama. They were super isolated. They made their own quilts out of fabric, like working like denim and other things. They're super modern. Right. They started in the 30s. Take a look and see. So it's like a thing. Then there was a museum and there was all this stuff, and like now they're like a really big deal thing. And they hold workshops so people can learn how to do a Gee's Bend quilt. Well, so yeah, look up Gee's Bend. It's like a thing. It's like a big deal thing. Anyway, so we're thinking about putting together. Well, they were thinking of putting together a conference. First, they wanted to do a workshop and have the Gee's Bend ladies come down and teach them for real, which is awesome. And then there's a play, so they want to put the play on now. And then we've said that we probably will help them on the sort of speaker side. But one of the things we're starting to think about, and I don't know if we'll do it or not, is Gee's Bend inspired quilts, and sort of most of it's handmade, and they're all scrappy in really interesting ways. And I would love for you to, if we go for it, it would be really fun. We're going to try to invite people to make a quilt, whatever size, small or big, and display them. That's my thought, is we should be doing that at all different levels. But I imagine it's a style you might like. It's really cool. Yeah. And it's got a lot of history, and it's got a lot of issues. A lot of legal issues arose, and it's got all the civil rights issues there. It's really, it's pretty interesting. It's very much Alabama. We're in New Orleans, but it's very much Alabama's history in some way. So we're just starting to think about that. I don't know if it's gonna go on or not, but I would love for you to be part of it if you're interested.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and we're getting, I think it's Beecher Street Church Guild. Do you know about Beecher Street Church? It's so awesome. They have a quilt guild there. They're very nice and very welcoming. I think they're going to be involved too. So it's kind of growing as time goes on. But I think about like your philosophy and the way you approach quilting. You probably would like it. So look it up and see if it's something that seems interesting to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So, before we end, we're on close to the ending time for this. Any other thoughts about quilting or anything else? A philosophy? Oh, are you perfect quilter? Are you? How do you feel about quilting? Like that's a really important sort of like. Is it stressful quilting? Is it creative quilting? Sort of how do you tell us about your quilting philosophy?
Well, I would definitely say I'm not a perfect quilter. I like, of course, you're going to make mistakes if you do something often enough. Like there's a certain error rate for everything. But the nice thing about doing more like free form, less planned quilts is that like, if you don't love something or it turned out a little wrong, you're just going to roll with it, right? You're just going to figure out how to make it fit or work. Or if you just can't live with it, change it. If you really find it that stark and offensive. So I feel really relaxed when quilting. I try to get into pretty much my favorite thing now, just attempt to get into a flow state whenever I'm doing anything, working, running, exercising, cooking, quilting. So just like get in a sort of I don't want to say